The sun had barely risen above the horizon, casting a pale light over the sleepy town of Millersfield. The streets were empty, save for the occasional newspaper delivery van making its rounds. It was the kind of morning that promised a day like any other, tranquil and uneventful. At the Millersfield police station, Officer Linda Miles was sipping her coffee, enjoying the quiet before the town woke up. The station was an old building, with creaking floors and a charm that spoke of decades of service. It was her second home, filled with familiar faces and the comforting buzz of radios crackling with occasional updates. Suddenly, the front doors burst open, breaking the morning stillness. A young boy, no more than 10 years old, rushed in. His hair was a tangled mess, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. He wore a school uniform that looked like it had been put on in a hurry, the shirt untucked and the tie askew. "I need to see someone, it's urgent," he shouted, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Officer Miles stood up quickly, her instincts kicking in. "Hey there, slow down. I'm Officer Miles. What's going on? How can I help you?" The boy, catching his breath, managed to say, "You have to arrest my dad." The statement hung in the air, a stark and unexpected plea. The officers in the station paused, their attention now fixed on the young boy standing defiantly in the lobby. "Arrest your dad?" Officer Miles repeated, her tone gentle yet probing. "Can you tell me why?" The boy's lips quivered as he gathered his courage. "Because he's going to do something terrible. I can't let him." Officer Miles nodded, signaling to her partner, Officer Dan Brewer, who had been listening in. "Okay, let's go to my office and you can tell me everything, all right?" The boy nodded vigorously and followed her, casting nervous glances behind him as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Once in her office, Officer Miles offered him a seat. She sat down across from him, her expression kind but professional. "Start from the beginning," she urged. "My name is Tyler," he began, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "My dad, he's been acting weird, more angry and scary." "Scary how?" Officer Brewer interjected softly. Tyler swallowed hard. "He fights a lot with my mom. But last night he said he was going to make sure she never bothered him again. He was packing things, tools and stuff." Officer Miles exchanged a glance with Brewer. "Did he say anything else, Tyler? Anything specific?" "He said he was going to fix the problem tonight. He has a plan." Tyler's voice was barely above a whisper now. "I heard him talking on the phone. He said it'd be easy to make it look like an accident." The severity of the situation dawned on the officers. Officer Miles took a deep breath, maintaining her composure for Tyler's sake. "You did the right thing coming here, Tyler. We're going to check on your mom and make sure everyone is safe. Can you give us your address?" Tyler nodded, quickly rattling off his address. Officer Miles stood up, her resolve firm. "Officer Brewer, alert the unit. We need to check on Tyler's mom immediately." As Brewer hurried out, Officer Miles turned back to Tyler, her voice reassuring. "We're going to take care of this, okay? You're very brave for telling us." Tyler managed a small, tentative smile, his eyes still shadowed with worry. As Officer Miles guided him out of the office to wait in a safer area, the station sprang to life, the gravity of the situation setting a swift, decisive response into motion. Outside, the sun climbed higher, the light spreading over Millersfield. But inside the police station, the day had taken a turn toward the unexpected, with every officer ready to respond to a situation none of them had anticipated when they clocked in that morning. The morning air buzzed with the tense energy of urgency as Officer Miles escorted Tyler to a small, quiet room where he could remain safe while the situation unfolded. Tyler clutched a small, worn-out toy car in his hand, spinning the wheels absently as he sat in a chair too big for him, his feet dangling above the floor. Outside the comforting confines of the room, the police station was a hive of activity. Officers coordinated their efforts, maps were consulted, and plans hastily drawn up. The dispatcher's voice rose and fell in steady rhythms, a counterpoint to the growing concern among the team. In another part of the town, the response team arrived at Tyler's address, a quaint house bordered by wildflowers that belied the tension within. The officers approached cautiously, their senses heightened, aware of the gravity of the information provided by Tyler. The front door was ajar, swinging slightly in the gentle morning breeze. Inside, the house held the echo of recent arguments, the air heavy with the unspoken. Pictures on the walls depicted happier times, a stark contrast to the current atmosphere of dread. The team split up, systematically clearing each room, their movements precise. Back at the station, Officer Miles briefed her superior, Captain Harrow, a man with years of experience that showed in his deliberate, calculated actions. He listened intently to the details, his brow furrowed, recognizing the delicate balance between speed and caution. Meanwhile, Officer Brewer coordinated with local law enforcement to track down Tyler's father. His car had been spotted heading towards the outskirts of town, an area known for its sprawling woods and isolated pathways. A sense of urgency propelled the officers as they pieced together the potential destinations. As the morning wore on, the community of Millersfield remained oblivious to the drama unfolding. Shop owners opened their stores, children laughed on their way to school, and the local bakery prepared for the morning rush, the scent of fresh bread a comforting constant in the small town. In the midst of this, Tyler sat quietly, his mind replaying the events that led him to the police station. He was a solitary figure, lost in thought, his young mind trying to make sense of the fears he harbored. Occasionally, an officer would check on him, offering a smile or a reassuring word, their presence a silent promise of protection. The search for Tyler's father became a race against time, the officers aware that every passing minute could mean the difference between a peaceful resolution and a tragic outcome. Leads were followed, sightings confirmed, and the net slowly tightened around the man whose actions had set this all in motion. As noon approached, the tension reached a crescendo. The community's day progressed unaware of the undercurrents of the search, the police working diligently to prevent any harm from coming to Tyler's family. The officers were a tapestry of dedication, each thread woven with the professionalism and care that the situation demanded. No conclusion had yet been reached, the story of the day still unfolding with each tick of the clock. The stakes were high, the outcome uncertain, but the resolve of Millersfield's finest never wavered. They were a beacon of hope in the turmoil, a steadfast force standing guard over the town and its people. As the clock's hands continued their relentless march, the atmosphere within the police station remained charged with a palpable sense of urgency. Officer Miles, her face a mask of concentration, periodically checked in with the teams on the ground while ensuring Tyler remained insulated from the growing tension. Outside, the sun climbed higher, its rays spilling over the landscape, touching the streets of Millersfield with light, yet unable to dispel the shadow cast by the day's events. The town went about its usual rhythm, unaware of the drama unfolding in its midst. In the quiet room, Tyler held onto his toy car, the small object a link to simpler times. Occasionally, he would glance up as an officer passed by, their steps echoing softly on the linoleum floors. Each time he searched their faces for signs, trying to read the story their expressions told. The search for Tyler's father had led the team deep into the surrounding woods, where the dense foliage formed a green canopy, a natural labyrinth. The air was cool under the trees, the sounds of the forest both a soothing backdrop and a reminder of the seriousness of their pursuit. Each officer moved with purpose, their eyes scanning, every sense attuned to the task at hand. Back at the house, another team worked meticulously, gathering any evidence that could provide insight into the motives of Tyler's father. The house whispered secrets of a family life once filled with laughter, now overshadowed by the specter of fear. Photographs smiled back at the officers from the walls, silent witnesses to better days. Communication between the teams was constant. Officer Brewer, stationed at a makeshift command center, coordinated the efforts, his voice a steady thread in the fabric of the operation. Maps were marked, routes timed, and strategies adjusted as new information came to light. In another part of town, unnoticed by many, an elderly woman peered out from her window, her keen eyes noting the unusual activity. In Millersfield, news traveled fast, and it wasn't long before whispers of concern spread among the residents, a growing awareness that not all was as it should be. Meanwhile, the search team in the woods spotted a figure in the distance, the silhouette momentarily visible before disappearing behind the thick trunks of ancient trees. The pursuit intensified, the officers spreading out, their calls to one another soft but urgent. As the day wore on, the shadows lengthened, the sunlight waning as it filtered through the leaves. The search continued, each officer a beacon of resolve, their commitment unwavering as they navigated the challenges posed by the terrain and the gravity of their mission. Tyler, still in the safety of the police station, slowly built a world around his toy car, a tiny universe where control was measured in the simple movement of wheels on a carpet. His thoughts occasionally wandered to his mother, his home, and what the coming hours might hold. The officers outside moved like shadows among the trees, a dance of light and dark, their footsteps a soft murmur against the forest floor. The urgency of their task was mirrored in the quickening pace of their hearts, each beat a drum of hope and fear. As evening approached, the contrast between the light and shadow grew sharper, a metaphor for the unfolding narrative that held the town in its grip. The story of the day continued to be written, each moment a brushstroke on a canvas still blank with possibilities. In the deepening dusk, the woods around Millersfield took on a more somber tone. The sun, now just a whisper above the horizon, cast long shadows that stretched like fingers across the forest floor. The search team, their movements more urgent in the fading light, communicated with hand signals, their voices reduced to a necessary silence. Back at the command center, Officer Brewer updated the maps with new pins and lines, each a testament to the paths trodden and the areas yet to be covered. The team's efforts were a delicate balance of speed and thoroughness, a dance on the edge of twilight. Inside the police station, the world seemed to shrink to the confines of the room where Tyler sat. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional murmur of voices provided a backdrop to his thoughts. He replayed his last conversation with his mother, her voice a comforting melody that now seemed distant. Elsewhere in the town, the growing awareness of the situation had turned into concern. Neighbors whispered across fences, their speculations feeding into a growing web of worry. The local diner became a hub of hushed conversations, cups of coffee cooling untouched, as tales spun out with each retelling. In the forest, the search team spotted occasional signs of passage. Disturbed leaves, a broken twig, each clue a whisper of the presence they pursued. The officers moved like specters among the trees, their forms blurred by the interplay of shadow and residual light. An unexpected crackle of the radio broke the silence, a sharp call that sliced through the tension. "Visual contact lost, heading northeast towards the creek," came the urgent report. It spurred the team into a renewed burst of activity, their paths converging towards the reported location. As night began to cloak the sky, artificial lights flickered on, casting pools of illumination on the ground. Flashlights and headlamps cut through the darkness, creating islands of light that pushed back against the encroaching gloom. In the midst of this, Tyler's world was confined to the toys he arranged in meticulous patterns, each configuration a fortress against the uncertainty that loomed outside. His focus was a shield, each adjustment of his toy cars a mantra that helped steady his nerves. The forest now fully embraced the night, the darkness complete but for the beams of light that the officers wielded like swords against the shadows. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig underfoot, heightened the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. Back at Tyler's home, another team carefully packed up their equipment, their search of the premises yielding a collection of items and notes that might later help explain the events that had led to this day. The home, now quiet, echoed with the residue of the day's intrusion, each room a silent testament to the life that had unfolded within its walls. As the night deepened, the boundaries between fear and hope blurred, the community of Millersfield bound together by a thread of shared concern, each person a silent sentinel in the vigil that stretched through the hours. The story of the day melded into the night, the details enshrouded in the cloak of darkness that settled over the town, waiting for the dawn to reveal what shadows concealed. As night enshrouded Millersfield, the community's pulse throbbed with a silent tension, unspoken fears weaving through the town like a chill wind. The streets, usually alive with the evening bustle, bore a deserted look, residents retreating into their homes, drawn by an unspoken pact of solidarity and concern. In the dense cloak of darkness, the forest seemed to swell, growing vaster as the searchlights bobbed and weaved through the trees. Each beam of light pierced the night, a stark contrast to the thick shadows that fought back against the intrusion. The search party's footsteps, muffled by the dense underbrush, were the only sound in the otherwise silent woods. Back at the police station, Tyler sat in a pool of light, the room around him dimmed to a soft glow. His fingers moved absently over his toys, the earlier patterns forgotten as his mind wandered to the figures moving through the night on his behalf. His heart, a small drum in his chest, beat a rhythm of mixed emotions, fear for his father's fate intertwined with a desperate hope for his mother's safety. Officer Miles, her face illuminated by the glow of her computer screen, reviewed the incoming data from the field. Her eyes, reflecting her fatigue yet burning with a relentless drive, scanned the updates that trickled in. Each report sharpened the picture, a complex puzzle slowly coming into focus. The search teams, coordinated by Brewer's steady hand, converged toward the creek, a natural barrier that promised either to yield more clues or serve as a turning point in their pursuit. The night air, crisp and cool, carried the sound of the moving water to them, a constant murmur in the backdrop of their task. In another part of the woods, a sudden shout broke the night's embrace. "Over here!" The voice, urgent and strained, drew officers to a small clearing where the underbrush was trampled, signs of a recent and hasty passage evident in the disturbed earth. The discovery spurred a flurry of activity, the team realigning their efforts, their paths redirected by the promise of new leads. As the search intensified, the town's clock tower struck the late hour, its chimes a reminder of the time slipping by, each toll echoing the community's growing apprehension. The local diner remained open, its lights a beacon for the few who sought the comfort of company, the patrons' voices low, their conversations a tapestry of concern and hope. Deep in the heart of the forest, the beams from the searchers' lights occasionally caught the reflective eyes of nocturnal creatures, the brief glimmers adding a surreal quality to the scene. Each officer, their senses heightened, continued their meticulous search, aware that each step could bring them closer to the resolution of the night's drama. Meanwhile, at the edge of town, a lone car pulled into a gas station, its driver unseen in the dim light. The attendant, recognizing the vehicle from the day's whispered rumors, picked up the phone with a trembling hand, his action a ripple in the calm of the night that would soon reach the ears of those who needed to know. In the station, Tyler, surrounded by the comforting presence of officers, remained the silent center of a storm of activity, his thoughts a whirl of images and sounds, the reality of his situation a heavy cloak around his young shoulders. As the night wore on, each moment stretched, taut with the weight of the unknown, the community of Millersfield holding its breath, waiting for the dawn to bring answers. As the cloak of night began to thin, the earliest hints of dawn whispered promises across the skies of Millersfield. The stars, once bright sentinels in the dark, faded into the softening blue as morning prepared to reclaim the land. The search teams, their bodies weary but spirits undeterred, sensed the shift and doubled their efforts, driven by the light's impending return. The forest, a maze of shadows and secrets under the night's domain, slowly unveiled its mysteries as the darkness retreated. Each tree, each leaf seemed to awaken, the landscape transforming with the coming of dawn. The searchlights, which had cut through the oppressive black, became less stark against the gentler morning light filtering through the trees. Back in town, the gas station attendant's call had stirred the police into a new flurry of activity. The car, identified as belonging to Tyler's father, was quickly surrounded by officers, their approach cautious and methodical. The vehicle, empty and abandoned, sat quietly at the pump, an enigma in the stillness of the early morning. Officer Miles, upon receiving the report, felt a surge of both frustration and hope. Another piece in the puzzle, yet a stark reminder of how elusive their quarry remained. She issued orders with a calm urgency, her voice steady despite the fatigue that tugged at her limbs. At the police station, Tyler was no longer alone with his toys. A kind-hearted volunteer from a local charity sat with him, offering quiet stories of heroic deeds and magical creatures to soothe his troubled mind. Her gentle voice provided a counterpoint to the tension that hung about the walls, her tales a temporary bridge to a safer world. In the woods, the search party regrouped at the creek, their paths illuminated now not by artificial light, but by the dawn's early grace. Signs of a recent crossing were found, footprints on the muddy bank, a discarded piece of clothing caught on a bramble. The trail, once cold, had warmed with these discoveries, leading the officers through a dense thicket to the water's edge. As the town slowly awakened, news of the night's endeavors began to circulate, the early risers trading updates with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The diner, its lights now dimming as the sun's rays peeked through, served as a gathering point for those awake enough to need coffee but too worried to stay away. High above, the first birds of morning chirped their greetings, their songs a natural symphony to herald the day. Their melodies pierced the solemn mood, reminding all who listened of life's relentless continuity, regardless of human trials and tribulations. Meanwhile, on a ridge overlooking the creek, a figure watched the search team's progress, his breath visible in the chilly morning air. The silhouette, undefined but unmistakably human, seemed to hesitate, caught between a desire to flee and a need to witness the unfolding scene. As the sun crested the horizon, bathing the world in a gentle glow, the figure made a choice, stepping back into the shadows of the trees, his movements a silent testament to the tangled web of fear and resolve that had driven the night's chase. The light spread across the land, touching everything in its path, transforming the hidden into the seen, the mysteries into revelations, as Millersfield braced for whatever truths the dawn might bring. The first light of day cast its revealing gaze across Millersfield, drawing sharp lines and bright colors over the canvas of the town. The police, their night's vigil bearing the fruit of hard-earned clues, moved with renewed vigor, driven by the morning's fresh promises. In the forest, the figure who had watched from the ridge now vanished into the underbrush, leaving behind a trail that beckoned the officers forward. The footprints, fresh and telling in the soft earth, wove through the trees, a silent guide through the thicket. As the team followed, the forest seemed to open before them, the path clearer with the rising sun casting its judgment upon the hidden recesses of the woods. At the police station, the morning shift brought fresh faces, their arrival a shift in the rhythm of the place. Tyler, surrounded by new yet kind faces, found small comfort in the routine activities they brought with them. The volunteer continued her tales, weaving stories of cunning animals and wise trees, her voice a soothing balm to the boys' frayed nerves. The search in the woods approached a critical juncture as the trail led to an abandoned cabin, its time-worn walls cloaked in overgrowth, a relic hidden from casual eyes. The officers approached cautiously, the memory of the night's urgency carried forward into the calm of dawn. Their movements were precise, a choreography taught by years of training and necessity. As they breached the cabin, the air held tight to the chill of secrets long kept. Inside, the search revealed little at first glance, but a deeper inspection uncovered signs of recent habitation. A makeshift bed, a few scattered utensils, and, most tellingly, a photograph that fluttered to the floor as they moved. It was a picture of Tyler, his smile frozen in time, a poignant reminder of the stakes at hand. Back in town, the diner's patrons thinned as people set about their days. The normalcy of routine a stark contrast to the undercurrent of tension that still ran beneath the surface. Conversations ebbed, the earlier flurry of speculation giving way to a watchful waiting. Meanwhile, at the gas station, officers combed through the abandoned car, each compartment searched with meticulous care. Among the personal items and usual detritus of travel, they found a map, its routes marked in a hasty scrawl, and a set of keys that hinted at destinations planned but unfulfilled. The sun, now fully above the horizon, bathed everything in its impartial light, touching both the innocent and the hidden alike. Its warmth reached the cabin, where the officers stood contemplative, piecing together the fragments of a life that had taken a turn towards shadow. Each clue, each discovered item was a whisper of the narrative that had driven a father to flight and a son to seek help. In the coolness of the police station, Tyler sat quietly, his gaze occasionally drifting to the window where the morning light played on the glass. His heart, heavy with the weight of unfolding events, held on to the hope that the rising day would bring resolution, that the woven tales of the volunteer might somehow presage the return of safety and love to his fractured world. As the community of Millersfield moved through the morning, each person, each officer, each hidden observer, played their part in the tapestry of events that the dawn had promised to unravel. The town, a stage set by fate and circumstance, awaited the next act, ready for the truths that the light would inevitably reveal. As the morning matured into a full-blown day, the whispers of the night transitioned into the tangible echoes of the forest. Millersfield, bathed in the clear light of day, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the resolution that was being forged among the trees and within the walls of the time-worn cabin. In the heart of the woods, the cabin served as a focal point for the unfolding drama. The officers, having secured the perimeter, delved deeper into the personal artifacts left behind. Each item was a thread in the tapestry of a life that had spiraled into desperation. Among these was a journal, its pages worn and filled with hurried, almost frantic handwriting. The entries spoke of fears and plans, love for a son, and a deep, abiding turmoil that had driven Tyler's father deeper into the forest's embrace. Back at the station, Tyler remained under the gentle watch of the volunteer, who now recited tales of wise animals who faced great trials but found wisdom and strength in their journeys. Her stories, steeped in the lore of ancient wisdom, provided a subtle comfort to Tyler, whose eyes often flicked to the door, yearning for good news. The police team at the gas station pieced together more clues from the car. The keys found earlier opened a storage locker not far from town, its contents yet to be revealed, but promising more pieces of the elusive puzzle. Officer Miles, coordinating these efforts, felt the weight of responsibility pressing upon her. Each decision, each action rippled out, affecting the outcome of a situation that had captured the town's collective concern. In the town, the diner slowly emptied, the residents dispersing to carry on with their daily lives, though with a heightened sense of community. They left in small groups, whispering about the latest updates, their words a mix of hope and worry, a community knit tightly by shared adversity. Meanwhile, the team at the cabin uncovered a map similar to the one in the car. This one was more detailed, with notes scribbled in the margins and various locations circled. The officers cross-referenced this with the information from the journal, starting to form a clearer picture of the mental and emotional landscape that Tyler's father had navigated in the days leading up to his disappearance. As the sun climbed higher, casting short shadows on the ground, the search teams regrouped, sharing information and refining their strategies. The forest, once a place of concealment, now became a source of revelations, each leaf and branch part of a larger story waiting to be understood. At the edge of town, the search for the storage locker took on new urgency. Officers dispatched to the location found themselves peering into a space filled with old memories and new evidence, the air thick with dust and the past. Each item pulled from the locker added depth to their understanding, painting a portrait of a man torn between his fears and his duties as a father. As the day progressed, the rhythm of Millersfield adapted to the unfolding events, the townspeople finding a semblance of normalcy amidst the uncertainty. Yet, the heart of the town beat with a singular focus, all thoughts tuned to the resolution of the mystery that had drawn everyone together. In the police station, Tyler, surrounded by stories and the soft hum of activity, held on to the hope instilled by the tales of the volunteer. His young mind, filled with the images of heroes and villains from the stories, now watched as real-life heroes worked tirelessly to weave a safe ending from the tangled threads of real-world challenges. The community, bound by this shared narrative, moved through the day with a cautious optimism, their eyes collectively trained on the horizon, awaiting the resolution that the coming hours promised to deliver. As afternoon approached, the sun stood sentinel over Millersfield, its rays piercing through the branches of the forest with a sharp clarity. The landscape, illuminated in the harsh light of day, no longer held its secretive allure, but instead revealed its open truths to the eyes that sought them. In the heart of the forest, the cabin's revelations continued to unfold. The map and journal, now thoroughly examined, directed the officers to several locations scattered through the woods. These sites, marked by personal mementos and signs of temporary habitation, sketched a broader narrative of a man wrestling with his inner demons while physically moving through spaces that mirrored his inner turmoil. Meanwhile, the contents of the storage locker brought back to the station were laid out like archaeological treasures, each item carefully catalogued and examined. Photographs, letters, and various personal effects painted a poignant picture of Tyler's father, a man caught between his past and an uncertain future, his love for his family a constant theme in the midst of his struggles. Tyler, under the patient care of the volunteer, found himself engrossed in tales of mythical creatures and wise elders, the stories imbued with the morals of courage and truth. These narratives, rich with the heritage of wisdom and challenge, offered him a lens through which to view the chaos of his current world, providing both distraction and a framework for understanding. Back in town, the community's routine showed signs of resuming its usual pace, though conversations still turned invariably to the drama unfolding on their doorsteps. At the diner, the last few patrons lingered over their coffee, their discussions a blend of speculation and concern, reflecting the collective pulse of a community tightly wound around the fate of one of its own. In the police station, Officer Miles orchestrated the integration of new information, her desk a command center of reports and communications. Each piece of evidence, each snippet of data brought them closer to understanding the motivations and movements of Tyler's father, and with each discovery, the weight of her responsibility grew. In the woods, officers methodically checked each location indicated on the map. One site, in particular, caught their attention, a secluded spot by the river where the remains of a recent campfire suggested contemplation or desperation. Nearby, a child's toy, part of a broken set, lay discarded in the dirt, a silent testament to visits past, perhaps times of happier outings now marred by current events. As the day wore on, the shadows lengthened, and the light began to soften, casting a golden hue over the town and forest alike. This change in light brought a change in tempo as the search teams began to consolidate their findings, preparing to regroup and reassess their next moves based on the day's discoveries. The officers at the storage locker returned to the station, their findings in tow. The items were spread out, forming a timeline of a life that spoke of joy, pain, and the complexity of human emotions interwoven with everyday realities. Tyler, feeling the comfort of the volunteers' presence, began to see the officers not just as guardians of peace but as weavers of safety, their diligent efforts a tapestry being formed in real time. Each thread they added was a step towards reuniting his family, towards understanding and perhaps resolving the fears that had driven his father into the shadows. As the community of Millersfield moved towards evening, each member played a role in the unfolding story, their individual actions and thoughts contributing to the collective effort to support one of their own through a time of crisis. The town, bound by its shared narrative, continued to weave a story of resilience and hope, awaiting the revelations that the coming dusk might bring. As the day waned into evening, the golden hues of dusk settled gently over Millersfield, casting long shadows and painting the town in the soft, warm light of the setting sun. The community, intertwined by the day's events, seemed to hold a collective breath, their hearts tethered to the unfolding resolution of the crisis that had gripped their lives. In the forest, the last rays of sunlight flickered through the dense canopy, illuminating the search teams as they gathered their findings. The clues pieced together from the day's rigorous efforts painted a complex picture of a man torn between despair and the desperate love for his family. The search was methodical, exhaustive, and as the light faded, it took on a reflective quality, each officer silently pondering the human story that had led them through the wilderness. Back at the police station, Tyler sat with the volunteer, his earlier apprehension eased by the comfort of the stories and the gentle reassurance of her presence. The tales of bravery and wisdom had woven a protective spell around him, insulating him from the harsher realities of the adult world. Yet, his eyes occasionally drifted to the window, watching as the day gave way to evening, his thoughts wandering to his family. Officer Miles, surrounded by her team, reviewed the day's progress. The evidence, laid out before them, told a story of a man struggling with burdens too heavy to bear alone. Each item, each report was a testament to his battle, and now, as they pieced together his movements and motives, they also prepared for the possibility of bringing him back safely to face the consequences and perhaps heal. The town of Millersfield, its streets quiet and its homes bathed in the soft light of evening lamps, was a scene of serene normalcy from the outside. But within each household, there was a keen awareness of the drama that had unfolded just beyond their doors. Dinner tables became places of quiet reflection or soft discussions about the values of community, family, and support. As the search in the woods concluded for the day, the teams made their way back to civilization, the forest behind them a dark silhouette against the twilight sky. They carried with them not just physical evidence, but the heavy knowledge of the human condition they had witnessed and the responsibility of resolving it with compassion and justice. In a poignant moment back at the station, Tyler was finally able to speak to his mother via a video call. Her face, tired but relieved to see her son safe, filled the screen, and Tyler's face lit up with a mixture of joy and relief. Words were exchanged, simple and heartfelt, their conversation a bridge over the troubled waters they had both navigated. As night fully embraced Millersfield, the police prepared for the next phase, bringing Tyler's father in, ensuring his safety, and addressing the issues that had led to this dramatic chapter in their lives. Officer Miles, her face a mask of resolve and fatigue, planned the steps ahead, each decision weighed with care and a deep-seated hope for resolution and reconciliation. The town, its rhythms slow and evening quiet deepening, stood as a testament to the resilience of its people and the strength of a community bound by shared trials. The story of the day melded into the tapestry of Millersfield's history, a narrative of challenge and response, of darkness faced and light restored. As the final chapter of this day closed, the threads of numerous stories, of Tyler, his father, the police, and the town, were woven into a conclusion that promised new beginnings and the restoration of peace, grounded in the understanding and unity that adversity had brought to them all.